I tried to hold on to her in my life. Her time ran out, and I stood there, in the quietest moment I've ever known, asking the universe for just one more hour with her. Not a day, not a miracle, just 60 minutes where I could sit close enough to hear her breathe, close enough to say what men like me always think we'll say later. And the universe, it didn't answer with thunder or a sign in the sky. It answered with a clock. 24 hours. That's what the doctor said over the phone, like he was reading the weather. 24 hours, give or take, and then that was it. I remember staring at my kitchen counter like it had the power to argue back. There was a half-finished mug of coffee going cold, and my keys were right there. My hands didn't reach for them at first. They just hovered, like my body was waiting for my pride to speak up and tell me I didn't need to go. But pride is a liar. At 40-something, you learn that the hard way. So I grabbed my keys. And I grabbed the one thing I swore I'd never touch again. It was in the back of my sock drawer, wrapped in an old receipt from a place that doesn't exist anymore. I didn't even look at it when I put it in my pocket. I could feel it there, though, like a small weight with a long memory. I locked my front door, stepped out into the night air, and I swear the cold hit me like a question. My car started on the second turn of the key. The dashboard clock glowed the time like it was proud of itself. I sat there for a beat with both hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the streetlights. Then I said it out loud, like the universe was sitting in the passenger seat. "Just give me one more hour with her," I whispered. "I won't ask for anything else." And then I backed out of my driveway and headed toward the highway. The hospital was in a small town a few hours away, the kind of place you pass on your way to somewhere bigger. The kind of place with one main street, a couple of diners, and a radio station that still reads birthdays and weather like it matters. That drive felt like time had teeth. Every mile marker I passed was a reminder that I was late. Not late like missing a meeting. Late like missing years. Late like the kind of late you don't get to fix. I drove with the heat low and the radio off because music felt disrespectful. I wanted silence. I wanted the road to tell me something. I wanted anything that could soften the fact that I hadn't been there when it counted. And that's the part that still makes my throat tighten. Because I wasn't her husband. I wasn't her brother. I wasn't anybody the paperwork would list in neat little boxes. But she was. She was the person who made my life make sense for a long time. Not in some movie way. In a practical way. The way your shoulders drop when someone walks into a room. The way you start making coffee for two without thinking. I kept driving, watching my headlights cut through the dark, and I kept replaying the last time we spoke like it was a tape I could rewind and edit. I could hear her voice in my head, steady and gentle, saying my name the way she always did. Not rushed, not thrown away, like it mattered. I should have gone then. I should have gone 100 times. Around midnight, I pulled into a gas station that smelled like rubber mats and stale cinnamon. The fluorescent lights made everything look tired. I filled the tank, then stood there holding the nozzle, staring at the numbers rolling up, thinking about how every second was also rolling up, and there was no card reader in the world that could pay it back. Inside, the clerk was watching a small TV with the volume low. He glanced at me like he was deciding if I was trouble. I wasn't trouble. I was just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, even though it had only been one night. I bought a bottle of water I didn't want, because standing still felt wrong. As I walked back out, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hospital called family. Please check in at desk when you arrive. That was it. No name, no warmth, just instructions. My stomach dropped anyway, because family wasn't me, and whoever sent that text made sure I understood it. I got back in the car, and for the first time that night, I actually touched the thing in my pocket. Just a quick press of my fingers, like checking for a pulse. It was still there, still heavy, still waiting. The sky started to lighten somewhere after 5, that gray-blue color that makes everything feel unfinished. I stopped at a diner right off the highway, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a bell over the door that rings like an old habit. The waitress had her hair up and her eyes half-lidded like she'd seen every version of a man like me. Tired, quiet, holding too much. She slid a menu in front of me and said, "Coffee?" I nodded. "Yeah, please." She poured it without asking how I liked it because she didn't need to. In that place, coffee was coffee. Strong, hot, honest. I took one sip and it burned my tongue and I welcomed it. It was the first thing all night that felt real. On the wall behind the counter, an old radio was playing low. A man's voice was reading off school closings and weather like he was doing a prayer. Then, right between two announcements, he said, "And if you're traveling this morning, watch for fog on Route 9. Take your time. No sense arguing with the road." No sense arguing with the road. I froze with the cup halfway to my mouth. It was nothing, a normal sentence, a phrase anybody could say. But it hit me in the chest anyway, like somebody had tapped the exact spot that was already bruised. Because she used to say things like that. Not those words exactly, but that idea. That calm refusal to fight what couldn't be fought. That way of looking at life like it was precious, not guaranteed. I set the cup down slowly, stared at the surface of the coffee, and felt my eyes sting. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there and remembered her hands, how warm they were, how she always held a mug like she was holding time itself. The waitress came back, set down a plate of eggs I didn't order. She must have seen my face. "On the house," she said softly, like she was handing me something more than food. "You look like you need it." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." She hesitated, then asked, "You headed somewhere important?" I looked up at her, and for a second I almost told the truth. The whole truth. The kind you only tell strangers because they can't judge you with history. Instead, I just nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Someone I care about." She gave me one of those small, knowing looks and walked away. I ate 2 bites, forced them down like medicine. Then I left a tip bigger than I could afford because it felt like paying respect, and I got back in my car. As I pulled onto the highway again, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. Not because I was calm, because something in me had snapped into focus. Like my body finally accepted there was no turning back. By the time I reached the town, the sun was up but weak, washed out behind thin clouds. The streets were quiet. A couple of trucks. A man walking a dog that looked too happy for the world I was in. The hospital sat on a low hill like it had been built to watch over the place. I parked, turned the engine off, and just sat there with my forehead against the steering wheel for a moment. This was it. This was the door I'd been avoiding for years. I slipped my hand into my pocket again, felt that object, and the memory attached to it came flooding up so fast I almost gagged. I got out of the car. The air smelled like winter and disinfectant, even outside. I walked toward the entrance with my shoulders squared like I was going into a job interview I didn't deserve. Inside, it was warm and too bright. The floors were shiny. Everything smelled clean in that way that makes you feel guilty for being human. At the front desk, a woman with reading glasses looked up and smiled automatically. "Can I help you?" I cleared my throat. My voice came out rough. "I'm here to see her. Room?" I was told to check in. Her smile softened a little, then tightened like a curtain being drawn. "Name?" I gave it. She clicked around on her computer for a few seconds that felt like a whole season. Then she said carefully, "Are you family?" There it was, that word again. Family. My mouth went dry. "Not exactly." Her eyes flicked up to my face, then down to my hands, then back up, like she was measuring me against some note she'd been given. "I'll need you to wait a moment," she said. I started to protest, but I didn't. I just nodded, because I wasn't here to fight. I was here to show up. She picked up the phone and spoke in a low voice I couldn't quite hear. I caught a few words. "He's here? Yes. I understand." Then she hung up and pointed toward a row of chairs near the wall. "Please have a seat. Someone will come speak with you." I walked over and sat down. The chair was hard and too small. My knee bounced without permission. A TV in the corner played morning news with the sound off. A man in a suit smiled at a camera like nothing mattered. Across the lobby, a vending machine hummed quietly like it was alive. I stared straight ahead and tried to breathe like a normal person. A minute later, I saw her sister. I hadn't seen her in years, but I recognized her immediately. Some people wear their family in their face, and she did. Same eyes, same mouth that looked like it was always on the edge of saying something honest. She walked toward me with steps that were controlled, not rushed. Her expression wasn't angry, it was guarded. Her gaze dropped just for a split second to my pocket. And that's when I knew. She knew about the thing I was carrying. My stomach turned. She stopped in front of me and said my name like it tasted unfamiliar. "You actually came," she said. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy. Yeah. She looked at me for a long moment, and I couldn't tell if she wanted to slap me or hug me or just walk away. Then she said, "Before you go up there, there's something you need to understand." My chest tightened. Okay. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway that led deeper into the hospital, then back to me. "She's not how you remember," she said, and her voice cracked just slightly on the last word. I nodded. "I know." She took a breath, like she was choosing each syllable. "And she left instructions," she said. "Specific ones. Instructions." My throat went dry again. I tried to keep my voice steady. "About me?" Her expression shifted, just a little, like surprise had slipped through the cracks. "She told us," her sister said, "that if you showed up, we were not allowed to let you in until you were ready." My heartbeat stumbled. "What does that even mean?" I asked. She held my gaze, and for a second she looked almost sympathetic. Then she said, "It means she didn't want you to waste whatever time is left arguing with time." Those words hit me so hard my vision blurred. Arguing with time. The radio. The note I hadn't seen yet. The way the universe had been nudging me all morning without me realizing. I swallowed, tasted metal, and forced myself to speak. "I'm ready," I said, but it came out like a plea. Her sister looked at me like she was searching for proof. Then, unexpectedly, she lowered her voice and added, "Did you bring it?" My hand went to my pocket on instinct. I didn't pull it out. I just held it there, feeling its edges through the fabric, like it might cut me if I moved too fast. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I brought it." Her shoulders dropped a fraction, and for the first time she looked less like a gatekeeper and more like a tired woman holding her own grief. "Okay," she whispered, "then you can come." She turned and started walking, and I followed, my footsteps too loud on the shiny floor. We passed a hallway with framed photos of smiling staff, a vending machine that smelled like warm plastic, a water fountain that dripped in slow, stubborn rhythm. My mind kept racing ahead. What was it to her? Why did it matter now? Why did her sister look at my pocket like it held a key and a sin at the same time? At the elevator, her sister pressed the button and we stood there in silence. The doors opened with a soft ding. We stepped inside. As the elevator rose, she finally spoke again. "She asked for you," she said. "More than once." My throat tightened. "When?" Her sister's eyes shone, but she didn't let anything fall. "Yesterday," she said. "And then again this morning, like she was waiting for something to line up." The elevator opened. The hallway upstairs was quieter, softer, like the building itself was trying not to disturb the people inside. Her sister walked me down the corridor, past doors with numbers I didn't care about, past a cart of folded blankets, past a nurse who nodded at her like they'd already had a conversation. We stopped at a door near the end. Her sister put her hand on the handle, then paused. She didn't look at me when she spoke. She looked at the door. "She has good moments," she said. "And then she drifts. If she says something that doesn't make sense, don't correct her. Don't pull her back. Just be there." I nodded, and my voice came out barely above a whisper. "I can do that." Her sister finally looked at me. "And whatever you think you came here to say," she said, "say it like you're not trying to get time to forgive you." My eyes burned. I nodded again, because there was no other answer. She opened the door, and there she was. Smaller than my memory, but still her. Still the shape of the person my life used to orbit around. The light from the window fell across her face like a gentle hand. For a second, she looked asleep. Then her eyelids fluttered, and she turned her head toward the sound of the door. Slow, like moving through water. Her eyes opened. They found me, and I watched her face change, just slightly, like some part of her recognized me before her mind did. Her lips parted. She drew in a breath, and then she whispered a name, not my name, a name I hadn't heard out loud in 20 years, a name only one person ever used for me, back when we were younger and braver and thought we had all the time in the world. Her sister sucked in a sharp breath behind me. My whole body went cold, because the way she said it wasn't confused. It was intimate. It was deliberate. It was like she'd been saving it. And in that instant, standing at the threshold of the last hours of her life, I realized I might not understand this story as well as I thought I did. I stepped closer to the bed like the floor might give way if I moved too fast. Her eyes stayed on me, steady in a way that didn't match how fragile she looked. The name she'd whispered still hung in the air between us, heavy and alive, like it had just been pulled out of a locked drawer. Her sister cleared her throat softly behind me. "I'll be right outside," she said, giving me a look that wasn't a warning anymore. It was permission. Then she slipped out and closed the door without a sound. I stood there, suddenly unsure of what to do with my hands. They felt too big, too loud. "Hey," I said finally, just that. One word. It cracked a little on the way out. Her mouth curved barely. "You came," she whispered. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, but the rhythm was still hers, calm, certain. "Yeah," I said. "I came." She watched me like she was taking inventory, like she was making sure I was real. Then her eyes drifted toward the chair beside the bed. "Sit," she said. I pulled it closer and sat, leaning forward without meaning to, like gravity had changed sides. Up close, I could see things I didn't want to see, the faint bruising from needles, the way her hands rested too still on the blanket. But when she looked at me, there was nothing weak in her gaze. "You look older," she said softly. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You should see the other guy." That did it. A real smile this time. Small, but unmistakable. "I missed that," she said. Something tightened behind my ribs. "Yeah? Mm-hmm. You never tried to sound brave, you just showed up tired," I swallowed. "I'm still pretty good at that." She shifted slightly, then winced. I was up halfway out of the chair before she lifted a finger. "Don't," she murmured. "I'm okay. Just adjusting." I nodded and sat back, forcing myself to breathe slower. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The room hummed with machines that sounded like they were thinking too hard. Outside the window, I could see a slice of gray sky and the top of a leafless tree. Finally, she spoke again. "Do you remember how I used to fold napkins?" I blinked. "What?" "At diners," she said. "I'd fold them into little squares. You always teased me about it." I smiled before I could stop myself. "I said you were practicing for a job you didn't want." "And you said if I ever worked at a diner, you'd only come in on my shifts," she added. "So you could boss me around," I said. "So I could make sure you ate," she corrected. We shared a quiet laugh, the kind that doesn't need volume to feel full. She glanced toward the tray table by the bed. On it sat a plastic cup of water, a folded menu from the hospital cafeteria, and something else. A book. Worn, its cover bent at the corners. My chest tightened when I recognized it. "That thing survived everything," I said. She followed my eyes and smiled. "So did you." "Barely. It was an old paperback she used to carry everywhere. The spine cracked from being shoved into bags and glove compartments. She'd always said it helped her think. I didn't know you still had it," I said. "I asked my sister to bring it," she said. "I knew you'd notice." I leaned forward and picked it up carefully, like it might crumble. When I opened it, something slid out and landed softly on my knee. A receipt. Old, yellowed, folded into a tight square. I didn't touch it right away. She watched me, her expression unreadable. "Go ahead," she said. "You can look." My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. It was from a toll booth on Route 9, dated years ago. The ink faded but still legible. And on the back, written in her unmistakable handwriting, were the words I'd never seen before. "If you show up, do not argue with time." My breath caught. "I don't understand," I said quietly. She studied my face, then reached for the cup of water and took a careful sip. "You never liked clocks," she said. I let out a short breath. "I liked deadlines. Clocks were louder." She nodded. "You always thought if you pushed hard enough, life would negotiate." I opened my mouth to protest, then closed it. Because she wasn't wrong. "I wanted today to be simple," she continued. "No bargains, no speeches, just presence." My throat burned. "You could have told me." "I did," she said gently. "A long time ago." I looked down at the receipt again, at the date. "That day," I said, my voice low. "You kept saying it was fine." She smiled faintly. "It was fine. It was just finished." The word landed heavier than I expected. I folded the receipt back up, slower this time, and slid it into the book. I thought you didn't want to see me, I admitted. Your sister, the desk, everyone acting like I was a problem. Her brow creased, just a little. They were protecting something, she said. Who? I asked. She met my eyes. You. I shook my head. Doesn't feel like it. She reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the blanket toward me. I took the hint and placed my hand there. She wrapped her fingers around it, light but deliberate. You don't do well with endings, she said. You rush them. You try to fix them. I didn't want our last conversation to turn into a project. That hurt, because it was true. I'm sorry, I said. I know, she replied. That's why I didn't need you to say it. I blinked hard and looked away, embarrassed by the sting behind my eyes. She squeezed my hand. Hey, she said. Look at me. I did. Her gaze softened. I'm glad you came tired, she said. It means you came honest. We sat like that for a while, just holding hands, listening to the quiet click and hum of the room. Time felt different, slower but heavier, like every second had weight. At some point, a nurse poked her head in, smiled gently, and adjusted a machine without speaking. She glanced at our hands and nodded once before leaving. You always hated hospitals, she murmured. I still do, I said. They smell like rules. She chuckled, then coughed lightly. I stiffened, but she waved it off. Do you remember the diner by the river? She asked. The one with the bad pie? I said. The pie was fine, she argued. You just didn't like cherries. You ordered it every time. Because you never finished it, she said. And I hated waste. I smiled, then paused. Why are you telling me this? She exhaled slowly. Because memories don't rush, she said. They stay if you let them. I nodded, unsure what to say. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. There's something else in the book, she said. Not for now, but soon. My stomach tightened. What is it? Not a goodbye, she said quickly. And not instructions. Then what? She smiled a little sadly. A reminder for when you forget how to be still. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to open the book and search every page. But I remembered the receipt, the words, do not argue with time, so I didn't push. Instead, I said, I'm here. Her grip on my hand tightened just enough to matter. I know, she whispered. And for the first time since the phone call, I believed it might be enough. I thought I understood what was happening. That was the dangerous part. When you're my age, you start trusting your interpretations more than you should. You mistake experience for accuracy. You tell yourself you've seen enough patterns to know how things end. Sitting there beside her, holding her hand, I convinced myself this was a controlled closing. Clean, deliberate, that she'd arranged it so I could arrive, feel something meaningful, and then leave without making a mess of her final hours. Correction, not reunion. Closure, not closeness. That thought settled into me quietly, like a story that made sense because it punished the right person. Me. She drifted in and out for a while after that, not unconscious exactly, just elsewhere. Her eyes would close, then open again like she was checking in, making sure I hadn't disappeared. Each time they found me, she relaxed a little. That should have told me something. But instead, I kept watching the door. Every sound in the hallway pulled my attention away from her. Footsteps, carts, soft voices. It all felt like countdown noise. At one point, 2 people stopped just outside the room. I couldn't see them, but I could hear enough. He finally came, a man's voice said. Not unkind, not kind either. Yeah, another replied. She held on. Those words wrapped themselves around my chest and squeezed. I looked down at her, at the way her breathing had a rhythm now, shallow but steady. I wondered if I was the reason she was still here, and if that meant I was also the reason she couldn't rest. That's when the thought hit me, sharp and convincing. What if the right thing to do was to leave? What if showing up was the end of my responsibility, not the beginning of another demand? I'd always been good at leaving once things got heavy. I told myself it was respect, space, not crowding someone else's pain. But if I was honest, it was fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of staying long enough to be remembered badly. She stirred, her fingers tightening around mine for a second before relaxing again. You still here? She murmured, eyes closed. Yeah, I said quickly. I'm here. She smiled faintly. Good. That word should have anchored me. Instead, it felt like permission. I stayed another hour, maybe more. Time had lost its edges. We talked in fragments, about nothing important, about everything that mattered. Then she drifted again, deeper this time. A nurse came in quietly, checked a few things, and leaned closer to me. She's resting, she whispered. It might be a while. I nodded. Okay. She's comfortable, the nurse added, like she was answering a question I hadn't asked. When the nurse left, the room felt too still. I stared at the book on the tray, the receipt tucked inside, the words I couldn't shake. Do not argue with time. I thought about the other things she'd mentioned. Something else in the book. Not for now. Soon. Soon felt closer than I liked. I picked up the book again, turning it over in my hands. The cover was warm from the room, familiar. I flipped through the pages until something fell loose and slid onto the bed. Not paper. A small cassette tape, no label. Just a strip of masking tape with my initials written in her handwriting. My heart started beating louder, like it wanted to interrupt. There was a small tape player on the shelf below the TV. Old, but clean. Someone must have brought it for her. I hesitated. Part of me knew this was the moment everything tipped. That once I pressed play, whatever story I was telling myself would either harden or crack. I pressed play. At first, there was just the sound of her breathing, close, intimate. Then her voice. If you're listening to this, she said, calm and steady, it means you didn't leave early. Thank you for that. My throat tightened. I didn't want to say all of this out loud, she continued, because I know how you are. You'd interrupt, you'd joke, or you'd try to fix something that doesn't need fixing. She paused, like she was smiling. So I needed you to hear it without arguing. I felt heat behind my eyes. I need you to understand something, her voice went on. This isn't me pushing you away. This is me trusting you. My chest constricted, trusting me. I didn't want my last hours with you to feel like something you had to earn or apologize through, she said. I wanted them to be clean, clean, that word again. I know you think you're here because you owe me, she continued. You're not. You're here because I asked for you, because I wanted to see your face, because I wanted to remember how it feels when you're quiet. The tape clicked softly as it switched sides. I didn't realize I was crying until my vision blurred. You always believed love meant holding tighter, she said. I learned that sometimes it means letting someone stand where they are, without pulling. My breath hitched. I don't want you to stay because you're afraid to leave, she said gently. I want you to stay only if you can stay without bargaining. The room felt smaller. If you decide to go after this, she added, I'll be okay, I promise. I need you to believe that. The tape ended with a soft click. I sat there frozen, the player still warm beneath my hand. So that was it. Not rejection, release. And somehow, that hurt worse, because now the choice was mine. Stay and risk wanting more than she could give, or leave and prove I'd learned nothing. I looked at her. She was still resting, her face calm in a way that felt intentional, like she'd already done the work. Her sister knocked lightly and stepped in. She took one look at my face and understood. You listened, she said quietly. I nodded. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. She was worried you'd take it the wrong way. I think I already did, I said. Her sister smiled, sad but kind. That's kind of your specialty. I let out a shaky breath. I thought you all wanted me to keep my distance. Her expression softened. We wanted you to be steady, she said. There's a difference. I rubbed my face with my hands. I don't know how to do this without messing it up. She shrugged gently. Then don't do anything, she said. Just be. Just be. The simplest instruction, the hardest one. Her sister pushed off the wall. I'll give you some time, she said. But don't disappear on her. She notices. After she left, I sat back down and took her hand again. This time I didn't lean forward. I didn't search her face for signs. I didn't plan my exit. I just stayed. Minutes passed, maybe more. Then her eyes opened. She looked at me, really looked at me like she was checking something off a list. You listened, she said softly. Yeah, I replied. I listened. Good, she whispered. Then don't go anywhere. And in that moment, with the red herring of my own guilt finally cracking, I realized the real tension wasn't whether I was welcome. It was whether I was brave enough to stay without trying to control how this ended. I thought staying would be the hard part. I was wrong. Staying was instinct. Staying was muscle memory. I'd always known how to sit beside someone, how to fill silence with presence instead of noise. What I didn't know how to do was stay without planning the aftermath in my head, without rehearsing grief, without negotiating with what was coming. After she told me not to go anywhere, her eyes closed again, and I felt that familiar urge rise up in my chest. The urge to make use of the time, to say everything, to compress years into minutes like it was a suitcase I could sit on and force shut. But her words echoed back to me, steady and clear. Do not argue with time. So I didn't speak. I stayed. Her breathing changed as the morning stretched on. It wasn't dramatic. No alarms. No rush of people. Just a subtle shift, like the tide pulling back without asking permission. I noticed things I would have missed before. The way sunlight crept higher on the wall. The faint rattle in the vent above us. The fact that my own breathing had finally slowed to match hers. At some point, her sister came back in with a cup of coffee for me. She set it down quietly, careful not to wake her. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Her sister leaned against the window. "She used to talk about this," she said softly. "Talk about what?" I asked. "You," she replied. "About how if you ever came back at the end, it would mean you'd finally learned how to stop fighting the moment." I swallowed. Did she think I would? Her sister smiled faintly. "She hoped you would." That word landed heavier than certainty ever could. Hope. She made us promise something. Her sister continued. I looked up. "What kind of promise?" "That we wouldn't let you turn this into a performance," she said gently. "No speeches, no apologies, no dramatic goodbye." Heat crept up my neck. "That sounds like me." She nodded. "That's why she asked for it." I stared at the floor, then back at the bed, at her face, peaceful in a way that didn't feel accidental. "And the thing?" I said quietly. "The one in my pocket." Her sister followed my gaze. "She wanted you to bring it," she said. "Not to prove anything. Just so you'd remember that you kept at least one promise, even when it scared you." That hit me harder than I expected, because the truth was, I'd carried that object for years without ever using it as intended. I'd let it turn into a symbol of failure instead of commitment. She'd known that. She always did. The nurse came in shortly after, checked her vitals, and spoke in that careful tone people use when they're standing close to something fragile. "She may not be very responsive for a while," she said to us, "but hearing is usually the last sense to go." I nodded. "Thank you." When the nurse left, her sister hesitated at the door. "I'm going to step out," she said. "If anything changes, I'm right there." After she left, the room felt different, not emptier, quieter in a way that felt earned. I leaned closer to the bed, but I didn't touch her right away. I just spoke, low and even, like I was telling her something ordinary. "I'm not going to rush this," I said. "I'm not going to try to fix it." Her breathing didn't change, but I felt something settle in me when I said it out loud. I reached for her hand then, gently. It was warm. Still very much here. I thought about all the things I could say, all the apologies I'd rehearsed on the drive, all the moments I'd planned to redeem, and I let them go. Instead, I told her about small things. I told her the diner was still there, even though the pie was worse. I told her the tree outside my house finally lost that last stubborn branch. I told her the neighbor's dog still barked at nothing, like it was guarding the air. I didn't know if she heard me, but it felt right. At some point, her fingers twitched around mine, just a little. I stopped talking. Her eyes didn't open, but her mouth moved. "Don't," she whispered. I leaned in. "Don't what?" "Don't carry me," she murmured. "Carry yourself." My chest tightened. "I don't know how," I said honestly. "You do," she replied. "You just forget." Silence followed. Not empty. Full. Time passed in a way that didn't ask to be measured. Then the doctor came in. He didn't rush. He didn't whisper. He just stood at the foot of the bed and looked at her like a person, not a chart. "This is the part where things change," he said gently. "It could be minutes. It could be longer." I nodded. Her sister returned and took a place on the other side of the bed. She reached across and rested her hand on her sister's arm. We stood like that, 3 points around something sacred. I felt the urge rise again, to say something final, to make it count. And then I understood. This wasn't the moment for words. This was the moment for trust. I slid my hand into my pocket and finally took the object out, not to show anyone, just to hold it. It fit in my palm like it always had, familiar, solid. A promise I'd made once and kept quietly, even when everything else fell apart. I placed it on the bedside table where she could see it if she opened her eyes again. Then I took her hand and stayed still. Her breathing slowed. There was no dramatic shift, no sharp line, just a gradual easing, like she was setting something down carefully. Her sister's grip tightened. The doctor nodded once, and in that moment, something inside me broke open and settled at the same time. I didn't beg. I didn't bargain. I didn't ask the universe for anything, because I finally understood. She hadn't asked the universe for more time. She'd asked it for one thing only, that when the moment came, I would be able to stand in it without trying to bend it. And somehow, I was. I didn't notice the exact moment she left. There wasn't a sound for it. No signal. No line you cross and suddenly know you're on the other side. One moment, her hand was warm in mine. The next, it was still warm, but different. Like the warmth was memory, not effort. The doctor checked, quietly, respectfully. Her sister closed her eyes and pressed her forehead to the edge of the bed, just for a second, like she was saying goodbye in a language that didn't need words. I stayed where I was. I didn't rush to stand. I didn't step back. I didn't look for instructions. I just stayed. Because leaving immediately felt like pretending it hadn't happened. And staying felt like honoring the last thing she asked of me. After a while, people moved around us. Soft voices, paperwork, gentle efficiency. The kind of care that knows how to make itself small. At some point, her sister touched my arm. "You did good," she said quietly. I shook my head. "I just stayed." She nodded. Exactly. That was when it hit me. All those years, all those conversations, all those almosts. And the thing she needed from me in the end wasn't a confession or a grand apology. It was restraint. It was trust. It was letting the moment be what it was, instead of trying to turn it into something that made me feel better. They gave me time alone with her after. Just a few minutes. The room felt different now. Not empty. Finished. I leaned close and said one last thing. Not because it was necessary, but because it felt true. "Thank you for waiting," I whispered, "and for letting me learn." Then I stepped back. I didn't kiss her forehead. I didn't touch her again. I walked out the way I came in. The hallway looked the same, but it wasn't. The lights were still bright. The floors still shined. But something inside me had shifted, like a compass needle finally settling. In the lobby, the vending machine was still humming. The TV was still on, muted. Life, it turns out, doesn't pause out of respect. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. I stood there for a second, just breathing like I was relearning something basic. Her sister joined me by the doors. "She left you something," she said. I looked at her. "I already have it?" She shook her head gently. "No, this is different." She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a small envelope. My name was written on it in her sister's handwriting. "She asked me to give you this after," she said. "Not before." I didn't open it right away. I just nodded. "Thank you." Her sister hesitated, then pulled me into a brief, firm hug. The kind that says more than comfort. The kind that says you're part of the story now, whether you plan to be or not. "Take care of yourself," she said. "I will," I replied. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was lying. The drive home was quiet. I turned the radio on this time, low. Letting other voices exist around me felt grounding. Somewhere outside a small town, I opened the envelope at a red light. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once, no long letter, no explanation. Just one sentence, written in that same familiar handwriting. "You don't need to remember me every day, just don't forget yourself." The light turned green before I realized I was crying. Not the kind of crying that caves you in. the kind that releases something you didn't know you were carrying. When I got home, the house felt the way it always did after a long trip. Too quiet, slightly unfamiliar. I put my keys down in the same place as always, hung my jacket, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to sit immediately. I walked around, touched things, let the space remind me that I was still here. I took the object out of my pocket and placed it where I could see it, not like a shrine, like a reminder. The next morning I went to the diner by the river. Yes, that one. The pie was still bad. I ordered coffee, black, and sat in a booth by the window. The waitress wasn't the same one from before. Younger, different energy. She poured the coffee and asked, "You want the usual?" I smiled. "You don't know my usual." She shrugged. "Most people do." I shook my head gently. "I'm trying something new." She laughed and walked away. I sat there, watching the water move past the windows, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was chasing time or running from it. I was just in it. That's when I understood what the hour I begged for really was. It wasn't 60 minutes added at the end. It was the ability to show up fully once without trying to steal more. It was learning how to be present in a moment that couldn't be extended. And somehow, that lesson kept giving. Weeks passed, then months. Life didn't become poetic or profound overnight. It became ordinary in a better way. I started doing one small thing differently. When I drank coffee, I drank it without checking my phone. When someone spoke, I let them finish. When a moment felt heavy, I didn't rush to escape it. I carried the ritual forward quietly, the one she and I had shared, not because it made me sad, because it made me steady. And every once in a while, when I catch myself wanting to bargain with life again, wanting to push or rush or control, I hear her voice, calm, certain. Do not argue with time. If you made it all the way here, I want to know something. Which part of this story stayed with you the longest? And if you haven't already, consider subscribing, not for more stories about loss, but for the ones about what we learn when we finally slow down enough to stay.